Hello, and welcome back to Concilium Historica Imperialis. Today, we'll be doing our very first episode of the Lorecast. I am Decurio Iomhar, and I am joined by my good friend of the channel, Chef Tekonis. Say hi, Chef.
How's it going?
Full disclosure, the hope for this project is to introduce new and old viewers alike to the wonderful lore of Warhammer 40k. Now, it is worth noting that this is not meant to be a deep dive lorecast. I will miss some details, and frankly, that's on purpose, as I ultimately wish for those listening to go out there and read up on topics that catch their interest. Now, for the shameless plug. If you like what we do, please consider joining us on patreon.com/Concilium Historica Imperialis, where for only $5 a month, you gain access to early release on our videos, exclusive bonus content, and a chance to vote on what projects we do next, like this one. As always, we thank you for your support and hope you enjoy our content. Now, on to the lore. There is a disclaimer. Before we get into all of this, it is important to note that when one discusses the war in heaven, from a point in the lore, it can refer to two separate events. The first is a series of conflicts between the Necron/Necrons and their overlord star gods, the Catan, or the Elder myth that depicts the war of the Elder gods. With that out of the way, let's get into it. Now, the war in heaven, in its most simple explanation, is a series of conflicts fought roughly 60 million years before the 41st millennium between the Necrontyr/Necron race and their Catan overlords and the Old Ones and their created seeded races, which we'll get in more of that. At this point, I suppose you must be wondering, what are all these proper nouns and how do they relate to one another? Well, like all good explanations, it is best to start at the beginning. And do keep in mind, most of what will be discussed in this section is loosely referred or outright speculated upon. So please take everything I say with a grain of salt. Heavy pinch, probably. When reviewing Warhammer 40k history, it is important to know about the Old Ones and their relationship with the war. The Old Ones were believed to be a venerable psychic reptilian race, with notable achievements being the first sentient race and therefore the oldest to travel the stars. The Old Ones made many technological marvels that outsiders would view as arcane, such was their supremacy on the subject. A notable creation of theirs would be the Webway, which, as you may or may not know, is a series of portals that span the galaxy that allows for faster-than-light travel without suffering from the malevolent forces of the warp. Though, I would like to note at this time the warp was not the raging maelstrom of chaos and destruction it is known as in the current era.
So when you said they're like reptilian like people,
Yeah,
like are we talking like your typical like lizard man from
yeah,
like D&D, or are we talking like
yeah. No, that's
how
not.
exactly how they look?
Ah, well, nobody really knows what the Old Ones looked like. The closest they ever got to with a depiction of them would be one of their lesser races called the Slan or the Slani. You think like lizard men from the Indies?
Just like a standard lizard.
Yeah, yeah, no, yeah. They obviously come in all different shapes and sizes of the reptiles.
Yes.
Like some look like chameleons, some look like iguanas, and
Yeah.
some crocodiles. It doesn't really. The unfortunate thing of the old ones is they're not depicted on purpose because they're meant to be an elusive, mysterious, like otherworldly force that set all the pieces into effect in order to create the backstory of this universe. But it is important to note that when it comes to the old ones, you might as well look at them as like the guys that made everything.
Okay.
Literally everything and anything you can think of. When they were traveling across the stars and getting to understand like what their whole business was, technologically and psychically, they were seeding worlds along the way because they ultimately love the concept of perpetuating life. Think of them like the mad scientists from like Jurassic Park. It's like I did it because I could. And damn the consequences.
Okay.
And while we will get into what exactly they're responsible for creating later on in this podcast, it is important to keep that in your mind. It's funny because we just came up on the next thing we were going to talk about. So, as I said, when talking about the old ones, it is important to note that they had a predilection towards seeding worlds of new species of their own design. These species will come up later, like I just said. It's almost like, I read my notes before the show. Look at that. For now, just realize the old ones were the type to have their slimy reptilian fingers and everyone's cosmic pie. Yeah,
So would they technically have been like how humanity started then in 4K?
you know, they do talk about that. And it's never so like I will go ahead and say that like the Eldar, yeah,
Yeah.
were created by the old ones. We know that for certainty. There was this race called the Kroorks that were created, the Rashan, and it is speculated, but not 100% confirmed, that humanity was also on that list.
Okay.
Um, if the name of Quark sounds familiar, go ahead and just make that leap, and you'll figure out what.
Borg.
Yeah,
Okay.
but something much scarier before they degraded evolutionarily.
Okay.
So before carrying on any further, let's talk about the warp for a second. You no doubt are somewhat aware of its existence in the setting, but for the sake of educating the viewers, let me run down what it is. But first, I want to hear what your thoughts on what the warp is. And keep in mind, Chef Tekonis here, he has been in like home games over the years, pretty on again and off again in many different systems. Wrath and Glory being the latest one.
Yeah, my knowledge on the whole lore of 40K is strictly to, like you said, a few home games, a few video games, some YouTube videos I've watched, which I being honest, a lot of lore heavy, and I didn't remember a lot of it.
You know the fun fact about Warhammer 40K as a content is it is one of those ones where you could just hop onto the wiki page and scroll for like 3 solid minutes.
It's going and going.
It keeps going, and it is a rabbit hole in every sense of the term. Like once you go down this path, forever shall it dominate your destiny. And it's good stuff, but there's it can be a lot. This is also the reason why I'm doing this podcast because I'm trying to keep it short, concise, and reveal the things that are relative to the viewer in the hopes that you guys go out interested in finding out more. It really is a great setting, but it can be a lot at times. And so, the warp.
No. Yeah, the way I've always like seen the warp or my idea of the warp, it always just seemed like an interdimensional space where basically the nightmares of everything have come true. Like if someone's dreamed it or had a nightmare of it, hey, guess what? It exists in the warp.
Yeah.
And they sometimes breaks through and causes havoc.
You know, as layman explanations go, that's not that far off. So, good job.
Yay, me.
Hey, chef. You did good, chef. Yeah. All right. But put as concisely as possible, the warp is a psychic dimension that is parallel to our own. Think of it as like a mirror realm that is made of pure energy, fueled by the emotions and souls of all sentient beings. Inside the warp, time and space have no boundaries or meaning, and its energies are constantly in flux. So, yeah, no, I'd say, oh no, you guys could sound off in the comments if you think you did a pretty good job saying it as best as he knows. I think you did a great job.
Like I said, it's basically like the picture of the warp I had from previous games, and
Oh, it's a hellscape for sure.
it's definitely a hellscape.
But it didn't always start out that way. The reason I tell you what it is has everything to do with how it affected, or rather, how it was affected by the war in heaven. Due to the carnage on the galactic scale that would last for untold centuries, it was, well, warped, if you will, into something much more sinister and altogether dangerous. Whereas before it was a place of simple reflection, it became corrupted by the war in heaven and eventually coalesced into a terrible warp space we know of today. And we have done on quite a while now about the old ones, which is fair as they are very important to the setting. But let's switch gears for a moment to discuss the Catan. The Catan are beings of pure energy that were created during the creation of the universe. So, like, Big Bang happened, and they were created out of that. In the beginning, they were little more than massive parasites that consumed stars before moving on to the next. They largely were disinterested in solid matter and kept to their feeding grounds, which were solar systems. Like they eat stars. Like the
So they're kind of like this universe's version of Galactus. It's
kind of
like eating.
kind of, except for for them there was no conscious thought. They existed because that's just how it is.
Okay.
This state of being went on for eons until eventually a lesser race known as the Necrontyr found them amidst the first conflict of the war in heaven. Now we are getting a little ahead of ourselves, but I'm just trying to give you some beginning context of what is and what isn't. Because talking about pronouns here. Now, we will discuss in greater detail the relationship between the Necrontyr and the Catan later. Just know that in the Catan, the Necrontyr found the means of enacting brutal vengeance upon their most hated foe, the Old Ones. So, now that the two cosmic players have been introduced, let's move over to the would-be pawns of this unfortunate tale. In their way, the Necrontyr would serve as the thread that would be pulled, that would unravel all of existence as it was known up to this point. Not too much is known about their early days, other than the fact that they lived in a barren world that was highly irradiated. All Necrontyr were riddled with radiation sickness and cancerous tumors all over their bodies. Death was a constant companion of the Necrontyr, so much so that they built massive necropolises for the dead that left only simple homes for those still alive.
So I take it this is before they became like
Yes.
undead metal
Yes.
skeleton guys, basically.
Yeah. So when we talk about, and again, I know there's a lot of proper nouns here, but so when I say Necrontyr, I'm referring to the spacefaring, cancer-loving alien life forms that lived and breathed. When I refer to the Necrons, I'm referring to the, living metal machine men who are slave conscienced and protocoled into being, death robots, essentially. The
So
term,
they're two different things.
they are two different things. But the Necrontyr came first. This is what they were, and for some dynasties, what they're trying to get back to, but most likely can't because of biotransference being permanent and their souls being snuffed. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. Death being a constant companion, once again, it's important to note that their entire culture revolved around preparing for death. They were very morbid. Their culture was very dynastic in nature and would see frequent struggle over their history. And they tried and failed to overcome their mortality with several genetic experiments, as you do when you realize that, you have cancer cells, but came to the harsh realization that their bodies could not survive in their world. So they sought out the stars to colonize worlds more forgiving to their nature. And this,
Makes sense.
yeah, yeah, right. It's like,
This one sucks. This is
one-
somewhere else.
yeah. In this endeavor, they were successful. However, they could not escape their short lives and sickening bodies for whatever reason.
What, are cancers genetic? Oh no.
Yeah, whether this is because it was so ingrained into their DNA or something else is it's unknown.
Yeah.
We will never know. It is not alluded to. It is not stated factually. It's one could surmise, as you just said, is it came so core to their genetics that they could not escape it, no matter how hard they try to splice their genes. What is known as eventually the Necrontyr would encounter the Old Ones. Imagine this: a sad, short lived species meeting up with a seemingly all powerful and immortal one that was just better in every conceivable way. You would surmise the conversation would be rather dismal, no? Yeah.
Mm.
Well, you'd be correct. The exchanges they had, and I can imagine the Old Ones entertained the Necrontyr on several occasions, was always the same. Please give us the secret of immortality.
Old ones, no.
Yeah. Yeah, basically, for whatever reason, the Old Ones either couldn't or wouldn't entertain them. Um, this, naturally, enraged the Necrontyr, but at the time, they were busy suffering from the wars of secession. Um, Need you to understand, by this time, they have created what is referred to as the Necrontyr Star Empire. They spanned a good portion of the Milky Way galaxy, as did the old ones, but they did it in a more secretive way. Not to mention they had the webway, so they were popping in and out of bubbles of reality, as you know, spacefaring lizards do. Um, so they couldn't be bothered. They were too busy trying to propagate life like mad scientists, whereas the Necrontyr were in the business of just amassing as much land as possible and then falling into themselves because they are a functioning dynastic empire. And as you know, dynasties struggle.
Yeah.
And when you got like hundreds of them out there, it's going to turn into a galactic civil war, which is what it did, which is what the War of Secession is essentially. And there is more than one. We're not really going to get into too much of those.
I imagine some of them are planets. So.
Otherwise, we will be here all evening, and I do not want to do that. So instead, we'll just continue. In these wars, there was a secret ruling council known as the Triarch, who sought to unify the Necrontyr Empire against a common enemy. Now, think of the Triarchs, tri as in three, as three very important pharaohs, which is what they call their kings, people who rule dynasties, as the most powerful of all of the empire. And they got together a long time ago and had this great ideas like, hey, we hold the most power. How about we get along with each other and leave the lesser dynastic struggles to the ones that don't matter? Because we can't get our empire to get along with each other, let alone decide who gets to rule everything. So instead, we'll just rule everything in the shadows and, you know, try and steer the empire in a positive direction for our species. Yeah. Yeah. On paper, it sounds like a wonderful idea. This concept of
Yeah, it sounds great.
yeah, but like you get three powerful men and or women in a room that has seamlessly intergalactic advanced technological superiority. I'm sure heads crack eventually. So I tell you about the Triarch as it is relevant later, but the important thing to remember is that they sought to create a common enemy for their species. Stupidly, they decided that the old ones made for a good target.
Hey, you know those immortal lizards? Yeah, fell those guys.
Yeah, thumb.
They won't share.
Uh, the logic of such a decision came down to the idea that after they defeated the old ones, the Necrontyr would steal the secret of immortality and at long last cure their species of their painful mortality.
I,
Yeah.
to me, it's like, if you gain immortality, immortality is not going to cure your disease. You're just going to have the disease forever now.
Yeah.
It's just going to be like an endless.
Imagine having like stage 3 cancer.
You're basically Deadpool.
But living for it. Yeah, Deadpool, except for without the humor, because they're noted for being dour, witless, and just really, really, they suck to be around, the Necrontyr. They're real downers. It's like I live for maybe 50 years. I probably not even that. I would also be pissing. Okay, so what came next was the titular War in Heaven. Yeah, funny how that came around. Which again was a series of numerous conflicts that almost always ended in the Necrontyr failing to defeat the Old Ones. It basically came down to the Old Ones being able to outmaneuver them via the webway, regardless of how advanced the Necrontyr were. And they were very advanced.
So is the webway separate from the warp? Is it something completely different?
Oh, okay. So the webway is kind of like a series of gates created across the Milky Way galaxy that tunnel in and out of existence in its own kind of little pocket tunnel dimension in between the reality of the materium and the unreality of the immaterium.
Okay.
It's like a sweet spot middle.
All right.
And it's instantaneous travel. So the moment that they go into one webway gate, they end up somewhere else. And usually the process doesn't take so long because theoretically they had space shuttles that were designed to just circumnavigate all the portal areas, the tunnels, if you will, really fast. Eventually, the Necrontyr were so soundly defeated that the Old Ones imprisoned them in a region of space known as the Halo Stars. This imprisonment would last for centuries, but all the while the Necrontyr fumed and sought a weapon to defeat their most hated foe. See how we're start circling back around to the previous stuff? Yeah. All right. Telling a story here. It's good. Now, there are numerous accounts about the circumstances in which the Necrontyr found the beings that would later be known as the Catan. One such account is purely accidental, while the other speaks of the Necrontyr's hatred reaching out to the Catan from across the galaxy. Remember, guys, stay petty. Regardless of the how or why, what is known is they contacted a Catan by the name of Azagorod, the Nightbringer, through their phone. This Khitan, or Catan, I assume it is pronounced Catan, but I've heard it the other way I just said. Uh, just Catan, as it turned out, had been close to the Necrontyr from the very beginning, having been born upon the star that powered their original star system. Who thought he was there the entire time and they didn't even notice? Rude. Through a series of trial and error, they were able to speak with Azagorod and eventually decided to have the Catan manifest into a corporeal form, like a physical form.
So at this point, like the Catan got more sentient
No,
than just
it is important to note that they were always star-eating vampires. They're parasites, man. They only live for their hunger, and their hunger happens to be actual stars.
okay. I didn't know if they were like more like sentient and had thoughts, but they were just consumed by hunger.
One would surmise what comes later that it is entirely possible that they did, in fact, have some, thoughts, because they do some devious shit. We're getting ahead of ourselves. Important to look at them like space parasites that do not exist physically. Period. They're otherworldly, non-material formed beings that consume stars.
Okay.
Yeah. Through a series of trial and error, I'll say this again, they were able to speak with Azar-Agarad and eventually decided to manifest him into a corporeal form. They wanted to, bring him into the physical universe. They achieved this by having the being cross something referred to as an incorporeal starlight bridge. By the way, first time I've heard of this contraption when I did the research for this episode. Once the manifestation was complete, the Nightbringer was encased within a body of living metal, otherwise known as necrodermis, and thus became the first Catan to take a solid form. Unfortunately for the Necrontyr, the ravenous star vampire had grown bored feeding on the flavorless sustenance stars provided, and instead found a craving for the awe and fear generated by the Necrontyr scientists that formed them. What came next was obvious: slaughter.
Just devoured them all.
Yeah, he did. Azagorod tore through them, feeding on all of their souls. Terror, suffering, all the nasty stuff. Num num good. Good eats. Sorry, I don't know. I just remember the Necronomicon.
The nom nom con.
The Nom Nom Con.
Nom nom nom.
Oh, yeah. We had a little board game night the other night, and we were, I don't even remember what the game's called. It doesn't matter. We're not plugging them or anything. Um, and yeah, so well, where did the Necronomicon come from?
But the Necronomicon or the nom nom?
No, I know where the Necronomicon comes from. That would be Evil
Or are
Dead.
you talking about the nom nom con?
The Nom Nom Con.
I think it's originally from a game called Overcooked.
Yeah.
Basically, the king messes with the nom nom com because he's looking in for a recipe and he accidentally brings back the unbread.
Good stuff.
So like, instead of undead, they're unbread. So much as zombie bread, like slices of bread and loaves and baguettes.
Do they got the mold and everything?
Yeah, they got like
That's great.
bites out of them and stuff, and bleed and stuff.
Oh shit, that's hilarious. All right. Back on target. All right. Now, as you would expect, after feeding on terror and suffering and souls,
Sadness tastes so good.
it took a while to convince the Nightbringer to relent. And this was the only after pledging undying servitude, basically slavery, this Catan and informing him, her, it, there were myriad other species that existed for them to feed on. Anybody other than them. um, so, satisfied with this, the Nightbringer decided, he's like, hey, you guys are going to create forms for all of my buddy Catan. Scattered across the galaxy, there was obviously other Catan. It's important to make that distinction. The Nightbringer wasn't the first nor the last.
Yeah.
Hundreds of them. Hundreds. Thousands. Number is not really known. There is a list of names. Maybe we can go through them if, we're short for time after all this, but, just know that there is a lot of Catan out there. But every single one of them, as far as we know, got bodies created out of necrodermis because the Nightbringer said so. And that's just where the Necrontyr are at this point in their sorry lives.
It's like either build a body or be eaten.
Yeah.
Build a body.
Yeah. What could possibly go wrong? You wouldn't turn on us after we helped you so much. No. So, one by one, they awakened, and much like Azagharad, these Catan desired to feed and dominate, as you do. Among these awakened Catan was one by the name of Mephitron, the Messenger. Mephitron was the weakest of the Catan. Huge margin. Just terms of power. But more than made up for this with his cunning and affable nature. In time, Mephitron had the most followers and had his agents in the courts of all the Catan. Again, at this point, imagine the Necrontyr star empire that has been pocketed into the Halo stars, having dynasties of rulership that the Catan ruled over. And presumably they started, expanding back out. That's not known whether that's the case or not. Just understand that every single one of the Catan now have their own domains and scheme against each other because, they're awful like that. They learn from the best after all.
Yeah.
Now that I've told you about all this, it is the perfect time to inform you of the other name Mephitron went by. To his followers and slaves, he was the messenger. But to his fellow Catan, he was known as the Deceiver. Yeah. This title would make sense when you discover what Mephitron did next. Want to take a guess? Take a swing at what he did next?
Guessing he betrayed the other Catan in some way or lied to them about something.
That would be step 6. We're working on step 1 right now.
Oh.
But yeah, you get the gist. I like it. A tale was spun of how there was a war waged against the old ones and the Catan eons ago. A war that the Catan lost and was forced into isolation to avoid their utter destruction. Pulling upon natural hatred from centuries of war with the Old Ones, the Necrontyr were tricked into believing they were natural allies in the fight against them. Now you know why he's called the Deceiver. He made them think that there was conflict between the Old Ones, when there was none. The only thing that the Deceiver wanted more than anything was more power. Because unfortunately, these star vampires, let's call them the Catan, they again learn from those that put them in material form. And the Necrontyr were naturally scheming and dour and power hungry and desired above all else to dominate. So it would make sense that as they become substantiated and start having cognitive function, that they would go to the things that they see in their slaves. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
You are what you eat.
You are what you eat. Exactly. To seal the deal, the deceiver offered the ruling council, which was called the what?
Triarch.
Yes. So he offered the ruling council, the Triarch, the two things the Necrontyr wanted more than anything else. Right? Unity, since they were constantly fictitious towards each other, and immortality. Both goals would be achieved by a process known as biotransference. See, we're starting to cook with gas now, aren't we? We're in the end game now, baby. To their limited understanding, biotransference would shed all the Necrontyr of their mortal forms and replace them with living bodies of metal, necrodermis, right? Something they've already figured out how to make. This was debated on for months, but after a time, Zarek, the Silent King, one of the members of the Triarch, made the choice to go ahead with the process. Should be noted that many dynasties did not wish to go through biotransference, but were ultimately brought kicking and screaming into the colossal biofurnaces. Yeah, dragged from their homes, forced into the furnaces, made into the Necron. For weeks on end, all Necrontyr were brought to these sites, and as their bodies burned away, the Catan swarmed around, seemingly devouring the cast-off life energy. Because, they're just good landlords. It was about at this time that Zarek realized he felled up hard. Seeing this for what it was, which was an elaborate scheme for the Catan to consume the whole Necrontyr race's souls, the Silent King understood they were now permanently bound to the will of the Catan as soulless instruments of destruction. Hard pill to swallow. We now come to the last series of conflicts, leading to the end of the war in heaven. We won't focus too much on this. Just know that there was a lot of back and forth between the newly minted Necron, led by the Catan, and the old ones. Many times, infighting occurred between the Catan, giving time to the old ones to use their budding young races against them to tip the scale back in their favor. The deciding tipping point in this cosmic struggle came in breach of the old one's webway. Remember that?
Yeah.
Yeah. This breach was courtesy of a Catan by the name of, and I'm going to try really hard to say this right the first time, Miadrazatha, the Burning One.
These names.
Right? And he did so by creating a series of living stone portals known as Dolmen Gates. Through these breaches in the Webway network, many warp spawned perils wreaked terrible damage against the old ones until at long last they were defeated. We would see the rest of the race of the old ones die off from the enslaver plague that would fall. Now,
So the old ones lost?
they lost. They lost hard. They were brought to the brink of extinction. And then the enslaver plague that followed after the war in heaven finished them off.
Mm.
Yeah, no, it's brutal. They were systematically purged from the galaxy. Before we go on, it is worth noting a couple of things as fallout to the defeat of the old ones. For one thing, the lesser races now had a chance at coming into their own in the galaxy. For another, after exhausting their resources against the old ones, the Kaptan were now severely weakened. Yeah. Deciding to act on this last fact, Zarek turned on his overlords and led a successful revolt that ended in the Catan being fragmented into shards and held in tesseract labyrinths as like interdimensional pocket dimension prisons. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Now, the cost to achieve freedom was very high for the Necrons. In addition to being soulless, many were still bound to their programming and fell back into mindless obedience to their dynastic rulers. And by extension, the Silent King himself, since he was the only member of the Triarch left alive after the war in heaven, and then the revolt against the Catan.
So there was like him and then probably not much else. And
Oh yeah,
that frontier that had not been turned into Necrons yet.
all the Necrontyr species were turned into Necrons. There was no pockets or domains that were left unscathed. So the Silent King, he was the last top dog. He superseded the programming of all the Pharaohs. So he was now the ultimate ruler of the Necron.
So he did turn into a Necron then?
Oh, every single one of them turned into
Okay,
Necrons.
every single one. Okay.
He just got extra bells and whistles and maintained his cognitive functions.
Okay.
So the way that they got the Necron, the Catan, is they designed everybody to have like subsized programming. Because again, they're machines, soulless machines. The only thing that's running them is programs and engrams. And these engrams are personalities of those that came before. So if you're like this pissant peasant, you're a mindless drone. And that's the end of that. They burnt it all away. You don't matter, you're a number. So even like in modern 40K, if you see those little foot soldier guys here, now's a good time to show you some pictures. Like these guys.
Yeah, like the
Yeah.
standards.
Yeah. A Necron warrior has no cognitive function. They only exist on the orders of those that are their betters. It's really, really, really sad. And by the way, now that we're on the topic, and I get this picture ready because what comes next. Now, Silent King did not like the idea of ruling over all of them and then having no say in what they do or don't do. Believe it or not, for being the most powerful Pharaoh, he also was probably the most liberal. He doesn't like that form of dominance over others, especially his people who have struggled for so long. It's also important to note that Zarek, the Silent King, was likely the 13th, 15th, 17th member of the Triarch before the war in heaven even was started. So somebody before him started up this nonsense. He was merely fulfilling the end game of this series of conflicts that span the galaxy and the Milky Way. He just happened to be the last Silent King. Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah.
Like dynastically speaking, there's always been a Silent King, but they came in different forms and different names throughout the centuries that the war in heaven took place.
Yeah, it's like a royalty title. It's like you become the king. You are now the Silent King.
Yeah, yeah. And that is a speculation, to be sure. There's nothing that says that that's exactly what goes down, but I can only surmise that that's how they would do that. I could be wrong. Grain of salt, remember? So I tell you that he didn't like that because of what happens next. Deciding to have none of that, Zarek gave back control to the many dynastic rulers. Like he programmed them to think and feel and have all their stuff back. But not before ordering them into their tomb worlds, because now they have massive planet-wide tomb worlds
Yeah.
to sleep off the war in heaven and hopefully allow the galaxy to calm down after millenniums of conflict. Now, before we go any further, remember when I told you that the old ones seeded a lot of worlds and created a lot of species?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's because one of them, more than one of them, during the last stages of the war in heaven, right around that lull where they had a Catan and the old ones were fighting each other. Well, in between that and, those many conflicts between the two species that were created by the old ones had time to grow, evolve, and perform their function. And every single one of them had a different function, yeah?
Yeah.
So, like, as an example, the corks were made for one thing and one thing only.
And more.
You would be correct. They are the perfect life form, organic life form for war. And if, again, they sound familiar, that's because they are orcs. They're orcs. Only corks were like 12 to 15 feet tall, every single one of them, and were highly technologically advanced. They are nothing like the comical soccer hooligan that the orcs are in modern 40K. They were altogether something far more terrifying.
They're a bit more sophisticated instead of calling everyone a git.
Take it or leave it. I like them as they are because you wouldn't like them as corks. And we're not even entirely certain why exactly they de-evolve these fun guys that they were. Oh yeah, you don't get it. They're mushroom people. Corks. They're fungus.
Okay, so how'd they go from fungus people to wait, are the orcs fungus people too then?
Yeah, yeah, the Quarks are fungus people. That's why they're fungi. Yeah, it's not even my joke and not altogether that clever. But yeah, so they created the Quarks for war, and they fought in the war in heaven, and they created the Eldar, or the Eldari as they refer to themselves, um, for art and music and all the things that inspire life. And they were also the most psychically potent species, save for the old ones themselves. And they fought in the war in heaven too, though that was not what they were designed for. They kind of were just,
Kind of get dragged into it.
yeah, they did, because the old ones were losing and they were losing terribly.
They're like, hey, we need everybody on this. Get over here.
Yeah.
Hey, quit painting. Get over here.
Yeah, so imagine
Change
if
this up.
you can, the tail end of the war in heaven, all of these uplifted races, save for humanity, humanity would come much later, uh, fighting the Necrons. So yeah, the curious little crest wearing, spear wielding guy right there, that's an Eldar during the war in heaven.
Mm.
Yeah. So the fun thing about the Eldar as a psychic race, they were so psychically potent that they created by thought and emotion through the warp their pantheon of gods and goddesses. Yeah, so Assyrian, Isha, Kalamin, Cain, the bloody-handed god, all of these gods were gestalted into existence through the subpsychosis and psychic power of the Eldar. And then they fought in the war in heaven and had schisms as well.
Mm.
It was a mess towards the end.
It explains why the warp got corrupted the way it did.
Yeah, but exactly why it got corrupted, because of thousands of years of constant high intake emotion and warfare. The Immaterium, as the warp is sometimes known, the Empyrean, a lot of names, the Sea of Souls, was forever damaged because of the war in heaven. And that is why the warp is the way the warp is. And we will, in later episodes, talk about more of the nature of the warp. Safe to say that bad stuff happened. Gods were risen and fallen. Schisms were had. The war in heaven was just a hot mess. Timeline wise, as the Necrons defeated the Catan, split them into the hundreds and thousands of shards of all of them, killed one of them. They did kill one of them. They eventually decided they were not going to win against the Eldar and the Quarks. They couldn't. Like, they were losing against them. The war in heaven was now over, but the Eldar carried that flame, as did the Quarks. Quarks love a good fight. They were just looking for Crumpin, you know? They were starting to de-evolve into the orcs as they would become, because they didn't have the old ones shepherding them towards a singular goal before being eradicated by them. Because the crooks, they were just designed for war. They were not meant to propagate anything. So it would make sense that when they didn't have their handler, they would de-evolve into the orcs. Whereas with the Eldar, they had a little taste for dominance as well, but in a different way. So about the time that, the Silent King was like, all right, sleeping program, activate. And everybody went to sleep. The Eldar were winning and the Necron disappeared, leaving the Eldar as the sole inheritors of the Old One's domination of the Milky Way galaxy. And that, my friends, is the war in heaven. Now, do keep in mind, I did leave out a lot of information.
I figured.
Yeah. But we have already run on long enough. And besides, this is just a taste of the lore to encourage our viewers to go and seek the lore themselves. So, yeah, what's up?
When you were saying that Eldar like create a lot of a lot of their own gods,
Yeah.
I do know they're the reasons for or at least some of them are for the reason why one of the prime like chaos gods exists. Are they the reason why the other chaos gods exist, or is that like were they also born from like humanity later and other stuff? Because that's why like kind of like the warp of like things in the warp are born from the psychic minds of people outside the warp.
Yes and no is the answer to that question. And I know that's probably not the.
'Cause I have heard how Slanesh was made, and
Yeah.
it's still like, all right.
So without getting into too much detail in regards to those topics, because those are going to be their own wheelhouse of fun.
Different thing.
Yeah, we're gonna do episodes for them. Just understand that the chaos gods have always existed and didn't exist. Slanesh may have been born out of the debauchery and hedonism and just unpleasantness of the Eldari at the height of their power. But Slanesh always existed before then anyway. So, yes and no. So think of the gods of chaos as beings of higher potential and power that it is conceived that they have always been and they never were.
Yeah, they just didn't have like a material like form.
Well, they exist solely in the world. They manifest from time to time, never themselves, always their proxies. Because all demons are in 40K are slivers of the power of the dark gods. They will never be able to manifest in the material plane, the materium it's called, or the realm of reality, whatever suits your boot there. It's complicated. We will get into it. Just know that they have always existed and they do not exist. So frustrating as it is to say yes and no. So, any other thoughts, Chef?
Uh, no, it's just like it's all interesting. I had like war in heaven and stuff like, but like we're the Necrontyr were they're obviously a race that wasn't created by the old ones, or were they?
Were they?
I mean, it's possible because it seems like it seems like almost all races within the Milky Way are most likely the product of the old ones.
You know, there has been hot speculation in regards to the topic you just broached. It is widely believed that the Necrontyr were creations of the old ones. Yeah, because when the old ones, they were the first to be star staining in the galaxy of the Milky Way, of 40K in general. They were the first. Again, remember, 42nd millennium, 42,000 plus on, 60 million years ago, they existed. Around the same time that we had dinosaurs on our planet.
Now it's just in this galaxy, right? Or is there?
Yeah, supposedly.
Supposedly, because to me, I thought like for an all powerful race like that, like it's like the old ones, it seems like they very well have, or most likely have had like, hey, you old ones do your thing here in the Milky Way. Wow, us, we're gonna head over to Andromeda and do some shit over there. Or we're gonna head over to this galaxy and do stuff over there. Like, there's like a possibility that the old one, like a section of the old ones, could come back to the Milky Way from another galaxy and be like, "Yo, what happened over here?"
I'm going to go into some real speculative territory right now. And please understand that this is not confirmed lore. This is a fan theory, not one that I proposed of. I think it would be interesting if it were the case. So remember when I told you that the old ones were hunted down to extinction?
Yeah.
Well, there is in the lore a confirmation that one did escape into the webway, only to eventually get ate by the enslavers, which I suppose we could talk about if you want, as it is relevant to post-war in heaven and the exact reason why the rest of the old ones were killed off. Um, and there's another that is said to have fled the Milky Way galaxy and tens of thousands of years later came back with the munchers of planets. So I want to try and find. There it is.
They came back with more Catan or just or
No, 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 no,
something
no,
else?
no, no, no. Let me cook here. All right, I got to get the picture. Okay, so this is I don't know where from. I think this might be fan art, but I want you to look really close. I'm going to go ahead and put it right there. Look really closely at that tablet. Look at all the forms and species and the iconography of it, and see if you can name some species from Warhammer 40K.
I'm guessing, well, obviously Eldar.
Okay, so we see the Eldar, yeah.
Uh, I, from what I'm seeing over here, maybe it looks like the Tyranid.
Yeah.
I'm guessing the orcs are in there somewhere.
The Quarks are in that, yeah.
Orcs are in there. I'm not sure where these Batman guys are.
I believe those are the Rashan.
Those are Rashan, okay.
I could be mistaken. Correct me in the comments if I'm wrong.
I guess the gangly guy here, probably the Eldar.
Yeah. So in that tablet mural is depicted what appears to be a Tyranid life form, a Krork, an Eldar, a Rashant. Well, one of them looks like the Slaney, which is the lesser race of lizard people that were basically they served as the stewards of the old ones. So the old ones couldn't be bothered. They were too busy being beings of otherworldly enlightenment. So they created a lesser race that kept track of things. And this is more relevant in Warhammer Fantasy's Old War lore, because there does exist a faction called the Lizardmen, and their whole thing is they guard the planet and the gates to the realms of chaos on said planet, since the old ones up and left for some reason. And a long time ago, before everything was eventually retconned, the world of Warhammer Fantasy existed in the Warhammer 40,000's lore. It's a place you could travel to. The old ones apparently created the world that no longer is, because they thought it was a good melting pot for experimentation of all their species. So it's like widely believed that the old world, as it's called, of Warhammer Fantasy was that world where they put all the races they had created together in one place to see how they
react.
react with each other. Um, so anyway, back to the theory at hand. It is believed, again, fan theory. This fan theory holds that one of the old ones survived, escaped into, like, say, Andromeda or whatever galaxy that was outside of the Milky Way, and for tens of thousands of years propagated the life forms known as the Tyranid.
And then brought the Tyranid back.
And then brought the Tyranid back. Well, okay, so we know through one of the Horus Heresy novels that it was a Pharaoh's device, which was a Necron tier Necron. Uh, think of it like a miniature astronomicon. We will get into what an astronomicon is. It's like a beacon for people to use for faster than light travel in the world. Big shiny light, like a lighthouse. And the Emperor sits on it and powers it and is sustained by it. A lot. It's a lot. I understand. Just know that the Pharaoh's device blew up in the Horus Heresy and sent this massive psychic shockwave that alerted the Tyranid in some far distant galaxy. And it took them 10,000 years to travel to the Milky Way and start nom-nomming on everything. That is canon. That is confirmed. Because even like in the tail end of that same Horus Heresy novel, it alludes that the Tyranid's hive mind locked eyes with the thing and that started heading towards our galaxy. Now, it proposes the same theory that the hive mind, the overarching gestalt consciousness that rolls over the Tyranid life forms, every single one of them, is actually a old one that was either corrupted, mutated, or is still just a normal ass old one that wants revenge.
And he's trying to reset the Milky Way by just
Exactly.
go reset the Milky Way.
Yeah, exactly.
Kill everything in your sight. Just get rid of it all and restart.
Yeah, yeah. That's basically the theory. Is it correct? Who's to say? The beauty of 40K is there's so many fan theories out there. Sky's the limit. That's part of the genius.
Is that a thought, like, because, like, you know, like all the warp is corrupted, but like, is it only corrupted in this galaxy? Like it's like a kind of like think of it like a wound on a body. It's like it's only infected here. So like let's say if like psychic individuals, if they were to travel to a new galaxy, would the warp still be corrupted there? Because I don't see how one war within one galaxy would corrupt the entirety of the entirety warp if the warp expands to the entire universe.
The thought on that is that the Tyranid ate everything. Now, if you look at like a map of the Tyranids coming into the Milky Way galaxy, they are coming from all dimensions, all sides.
So literally,
We are the last galaxy that hasn't.
so basically, everything in the universe except for the Milky Way has just been nom-nommed
Yeah,
by the Tyranid.
that's the running theory. Yeah,
Oh, like
that's why
it makes me
there's
think like the Tyranid are actually like maybe once like basically like they act as like a reset for the universe.
yeah. No,
That
that's
shit
yeah,
starts getting way out of hand. The Tyranid come in, kind of like a um the Reapers
yeah,
from Mass Effect. They
yeah,
come in, wipe out all life, they fuck off,
yeah.
and then build back up.
Honestly, my 2 cents on it is a little bit of the theory I just explained to you. But to add on to it, I genuinely believe that that old one, if it is indeed an old one, kind of lost himself in the hive, and now he's little more than just like a subconscious. Like so, originally the Tyranid were designed to wipe out all galaxies, hard reset, wait a couple million years, give a chance to the old ones to build up their numbers, and then go at it all again. Because the Necrontyr and therefore the Catan goofed everything up so hard that it created the warp as it is. So I think the goal of that old one was to wipe out the entire universe with the Tyranid, and then hard reset the universe, starve out the gods of chaos because they need souls.
Yeah,
They need emotion and souls. And if they don't have that, they die off.
they just
And then once that was confirmed, that old one would have rebuilt, but somewhere along the way, this remaining old one lost himself in the hive mind, and now it's just kill everything because we're hungry.
or did he?
Who knows? Who knows? The beauty of 40K is it allows you to think like this, go down these rabbit holes. It's a lot of fun. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So
Now
you
I
get,
did have a question about the Catan because you said like once they were defeated, they were like broken down
yeah.
into like pieces. I'm guessing these pieces are still locked away within Necron vaults.
In some cases, yes. In other cases, they escape.
They just
They are used as power sources, weapons, anything and everything you can think of, they're used.
okay.
So, like on the tabletop, you can actually have the Nightbringer, which, by the way, he is the personification of death. So, like, psychically speaking, when they brought the Nightbringer into the corporeal world, the materium, every living species that existed in the known universe immediately understood the concept of death. He is the living personification of death. Even us humans, we look at the Grim Reaper the way we do because that's what the Nightbringer looks like. Here, let's see if I can. I'm going to show you a picture of the Nightbringer. This is mad.
I guess there was some point where like humanity accidentally set a Catan free. It was like, oh shit, what do we do?
Yeah, there's actually wildly believed that there is a Catan on Mars. This is what the Nightbringer looks like.
All right.
Yeah. Does he not look like the specter of death?
I would say it looks like this picture of death. Yeah.
Yeah. So, like, the moment he came into the corporeal form, every species now had a face to the name of death. And that's just how the Catan are. They're that terrifying. But yeah, have you ever heard of the Void Dragon?
I can't say I have had the privilege of hearing about the Void Dragon.
All right. So I know we're getting a little off topic here, but that's kind of what this is for. Have some fun, talk about some stuff here. Let's see. The Void Dragon is a Catan in 40K that is believed to have had a hand in shaping the people on Mars into the machine cult. The Adaptus Mechanicus.
Okay.
Yeah, it's like the Tet Priest will tell you now, biometric screeching and all that silly nonsense. So yeah, they are, and again, fan fairy territory here. The Void Dragon was imprisoned on Mars by someone that you will later come to understand to be Big Papa Emperor, or Big Daddy Emperor, or God Emperor, or Stan. I don't know.
Stan?
Why not? He was Jesus after all.
The God Emperor is Jesus in this.
It's confirmed, yeah.
Okay.
It's older lore, but it checks out. Yeah. So the Emperor of Mankind, he's Saint George. You ever heard of Saint George and the Dragon? It's okay if you haven't. You're an American. I don't expect you to know British
No.
mythology. Let's call it. Um, some would say it's not mythology. It is a Christian thing, after all. Um, I digress. So essentially, in the tale of Saint George and the Dragon, and please, people from the British Isles, and do understand I'm a Sicilian American, abbreviating the hell out of a time honored story. So don't at me. It's not my fault. I'm ignorant. I blame the schools. Because the relevance of St. George means fuck all to us. But he went, slew a dragon, and then he buried it somewhere. But in 40K, that actually happened, and somehow the Void Dragon got on Earth. The Catan got on Earth, and Big Daddy E was like, "Not in my backyard." So he went and felled up the Void Dragon, and then imprisoned him in a labyrinth deep in the ground on the planet Mars. This is around the Middle Ages. So, like, I don't know if that's just like he's so psychically powerful that he just, instant transmission, him and the Void Dragon Mars was breathing without oxygen and then just dug a hole with psychic phenomenon. I don't know. I don't know the in between. I just know that there's a story where he imprisons the Void Dragon. So, what do you think a Catan does several miles down on Mars when people start to colonize said planetoid?
I start waking him up.
So, yeah, now you have this guy on this planet hearing thoughts, memories, all that. He's like, well, this is something I can work with. So yeah, he slowly starts to manipulate, and this is like where the machine comes from. Machine cult comes from. So yeah, fan theory, possibly.
Void Dragon's machine gun? What a twist.
What a twist. Well, I mean, it makes a sort of ironic and circular twist that the machine god is the void dragon, and the Omnissiah is the god emperor, Big E himself, the guy who put him in the prison in the first place. So, and I almost believe that, like, when Big E found the Mechanicum on Mars after the Unification Wars, which we will talk about, don't you worry. um, he looked at the cult and he's like, "Oh shit! You leave something alone for a couple millennium, and then this happens." He's like, "So, like, well, I guess I have to deal with these tools now." But oddly enough, just decided to work with them, not against them.
Hey, is this before? I'm guessing this is before the Emperor became the
Yeah.
skeleton and
Oh, don't you worry, your sweet little head.
which I still don't understand how that works and keeping him alive since he's just a skeleton at that point.
He's not a skeleton. He's a slowly decaying corpse god on a golden throne, and he will show proper respect to Hion Terra. Savage.
He's still a corpse.
And Jesus.
And Jesus.
um. So yeah, last thing we're going to touch up on is the enslaver plague. So the enslavers were warp entities that nommed on psychic energies.
Yeah.
They're from the Immaterium, the warp. And towards the tail end of the War in Heaven, when The old ones were on the back foot, and the Necrons were tired, and the Katana were tired. The enslavers got an inroad somehow, and proceeded to eat every psyker in the vicinity, including some of the lesser races that the old ones uplifted in order to fight in war in heaven. Now, we don't know why the enslaver plague ended. The only thing we know for certain is that it killed off the rest of the old ones, even the one that was hiding in the webway network, supposedly.
Supposedly.
Yeah. So
Allegedly.
allegedly. So here we are, the end of the war in heaven. Do you have any other thoughts?
No, I'm not worth having for now.
Okay.
I have more questions for more subjects, but
Yeah, well,
as
yeah.
for the war in heaven, I think I understand pretty
Yeah.
much a lot of stuff that happened.
Well, Chef, thank you for being here. I wanted to get you on the podcast and do a proper, let's call it legacy series. I figured a Warcast was a really good idea because, of all the people in the friend group, probably the most, copacetic you and I. And there's also, the issue of you knowing Jack all about
Yeah,
nothing.
like my knowledge is very minimal on the subject, and I've already talked to you about like possibly like once I learn a bit more, maybe more from these forecasts. I was talking to you about writing a short story.
Yeah.
Definitely going to be an elsewhere story. Like,
Yeah,
it's not going to be anywhere near canon.
yeah.
I thought I had.
That was a heck of an idea, but let's roll those dice. And perfect time to put this out there for those that care to know. We do in fact have a short story. I'm not episodes. We're not really plugging that per se, just giving you guys like a disclaimer. Sometimes it will be elsewhere. Sometimes it won't even be 40K related. That doesn't really matter. What matters is that I I want to have people I care about have an outlet for their creative angst. So you're going to encounter a lot of people who are going to contribute their said angst in this format. Be kind to them or be cruel. You know what? You do you. The only thing I can say beyond that, since you don't have anything else to say, is thank you for joining me on our first episode of the Warcast. Um, do you have anywhere you care to be found?
Uh, I think the only places I can be really found right now are either TikTok. I think you can find me on Facebook. I'm not on Instagram anymore. Um, I think it's about all my social areas I'm currently at. I plan on expanding more once I get myself more out there and figure out what kind of more uh to look for it, what kind of content I want to put out myself for whatever I do. Because I've already let my friends know that like my content's gonna be a little bit more different than this. Because right now I've told I have that like I'm making a board game. I'm also writing a book. I'm also writing a Mass Effect TTRPG right now. But there are a couple that exist, but I wanted to do a D100 system of it.
Yeah.
Like I'm currently working on a bunch of different projects myself that eventually, hopefully, like once I get to a stage where I'm like, hey, this is actually a Kickstarter, or hey, you can go find this here. Like I can actually say, hey guys, go check out my stuff.
Oh yeah, and I'll plug the shit out of your shit any day of the week. Well, Chef, thank you for being on. We'll see everybody again next month where we are going to be talking about humanity, the history. Ideally, we're going to talk about the prehistory leading up to the Unification Wars. And depending upon how long that takes, we'll either split it into another episode where we go from Unification Wars to the Horus Heresy, or we might just cover it all in one sitting. I don't know. It's as the muse comes.
We'll see what happens.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. We'll see. It's all about, running those algorithm numbers. So if you like what we do, once again, you can find Concilium Historic Imperialis on both YouTube and Spotify. We do have a Patreon. I already plugged that. Check us out. Support us if you feel inclined to. If you do, thank you very much. We desperately need the help. This is some wood shop levels of just jury rigging and everything, and Listen, guys, editing's hard, and I'm not altogether the most intelligent when it comes to computers. So help a brother out, would you? You got something constructive to say to me, say it in the comments, say it with your chest. Know that I will judge you strongly and cry deeply. I'm alone. What are my feelings like that? No, I'm just kidding. Hey, you guys be you, we'll be us. And thank you for joining us. Chef, stay beautiful. Otherwise, viewership, also stay beautiful. We'll see you all on the next one. Bye.
Bye bye.